we are starting on the interior build now. Well, we've actually already started it. You guys have already seen a little bit of it. But now it's starting to come together. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's going on right now. So we can all catch up together on this. I've already done some of the detail paint work. As you can see, you saw in the last video, the seats are done. They're painted. The pre-shading is done, so it gives it a nice used look. The interior is now done. As you can see, I've done all the detail painting, or most of it anyway. Still have a little bit more to do. On the center console, you can see there all the trim work is all set up. Let me see if I can give you guys a better look here. Everything is set up in there. Here you can see the radio controls. I'm hoping that we can focus, camera, focus. One of these days I really got to get a dedicated camera to this. But here you can see the interior, the bezels for the shifter surround, the radio, and the instrument cluster are all done in titanium silver, which I found is a pretty good match for the metallic titanium-like coloring of the bezels in the real car. We also have all of our gauges painted, although I may do a little something more for the... There we go. Oops. And just as I get it to focus, I drop it. So I may do a little something more for the instrument cluster. I mean the instruments here, the speedometer and the tach. But as you can see, I've already highlighted everything in there, so you can really see it all nice. But I got a little something more in store for that. And all of the idiot lights are lit. Here you can see the radio controls are all painted. We have all of our buttons detailed out. So the interior is really coming together. And here you can see the mat pocket, which I designed. It's not in there permanently yet because we still have to do the carpeting, but we do have the mat pocket in there, and the mat pocket's been painted and detailed. So now we're working on a new mat pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys how I made this thing. So let's get all of this stuff out of the way. Let's put our seats back in. And I'll show you what the mat pocket looks like before it's all done up. And this is the beginning of our mat pocket. Now, basically what I did was I measured out the space on the interior, and then I cut 2 small strips of styrene. Now, the reason I cut 2 of them is that the mat pocket is going to have a curve to it, like the real one does, for the flap that folds out for the pocket itself. Now, while I'm not making well, it's too small to make it actually fold out for real, I am going to simulate that using these 2 strips of styrene. And I need the bottom to be thicker than the top. So I've already glued them together. Now it's just a bunch of filing and sanding and sanding and filing, which I'm pretty sure you guys are not going to want to watch. So we're going to come back when we are a little more together with this thing. Okay guys, let's pause this little video here. I was watching while I was working. Now, what I did was, for the next step, is I take some CA glue and I just blob it over the ridge that's from the higher and lower strips of sprue. Now what that's going to do is that's going to give me my filler at an angle that I'm going to then proceed to sand after it's completely dried and cured. So this has got to sit for a while until it dries, and then we'll be back with more of it. But until then, we're going to move on to, what can we do next? Probably our carpeting. So let's move on to that. Hey guys, I'm going to show you how I do the carpeting. Now, fun fact about the Fiero, in case you guys didn't know, is that the interior is split up into 2 completely separate compartments, as the driver's side carpeting and the passenger side carpeting are 2 separate parts, because the Fiero down the center is got a huge center console and armrest. It's very wide. The reason for that is that there's a gas tank in there. The gas tank is right down the center of the car, which is actually the safest place for it to be because nothing's really going to get to that unless the car gets completely flattened. Now, the only bit of trim work that actually goes from passenger to driver side is the rear covering on the rear shelf here, as that's the only piece that goes from one side to the other. The carpeting on the rear car is one separate piece of carpeting here and one separate here. So that's going to free us up to be able to do the carpeting on this side. I can't do this side yet because I still have to finish making the mat pocket. So what I'm going to do is remove the mat pocket that I made here, which is only held on with sticky tack or fun tack or whatever we call this stuff now. And I am going to proceed to walk you guys through how I do my carpeting. All right, now we're going to be carpeting the door, as in the real Fiero. The lower door panel has carpeting. Part of the door panel has carpeting, as well as the regular carpeted areas. So let's go. Let's start carpeting. All right, now I know I've covered this before on previous videos, but we're going to go over it again for those of you who haven't seen my other videos. And if you're one of those who haven't, hey, go back and watch them. They're fantastic, even if I do say so myself, and I do, because I mean, you know, who else is going to? So anyway, what I use for flocking, for the most part, is embossing powder, as this stuff really makes a convincing carpet, and it's very easy to use, much easier than the regular flocking, as that gets everywhere. The little nylon fibers float all over the place and it becomes a huge mess. So I'm going to show you how I do this. Now, I take my Mod Podge, I water it down so it's very, very thin, and then I'm going to use a brush and apply it to all the areas that I want carpeted, working one section at a time. Then I'm going to take my embossing powder. You can pick this up at any Hobby Lobby, craft store. They sell all sorts of different colors. This one just happens to be a really good match for the Fiero because it's got the light and the dark gray particles, which kind of look, well, to me anyway, like the tweed material that's in the Fiero carpeting, which is pretty much the only reason I bought this color, because I just thought it was a really good match for the Fiero. So you're going to take this and you're going to shake it up into the carpeting until you get a nice even coating. You're going to shake off the excess, and then you're going to have your first layer of carpeting. Now what I found is that sometimes it'll not stick evenly and you'll get thin or bald spots of the carpeting, in which case then what I do is I take a much more watered mixture of the Mod Podge and I just place it over the carpeting, put a little more down, and you just keep repeating the procedure until you get a nice smooth even carpeting carpeted area. Now the only area I'm not going to carpet is where the seats go, because there's really no point to that. As when you see here, you're not going to see much of it. Okay, now I'm going to take my brushes and I'm going to start applying the Mod Podge. Now this is the matte Mod Podge so that it doesn't leave a high gloss underneath the carpet. And I'm going to just spread it evenly around the area that I want to carpet. As I said, one small section at a time. And then I'm going to proceed to just pour the embossing powder into the area that I have just laid the Mod Podge over. Now you can just keep repeating the process until you get the desired carpet that you want. Always a good idea that after you lay your first layer, you go back and you check and see how the process is working out. Now that we've laid our first layer of carpeting, we're going to look over and see our progress. And you can see here that we are a little bit thin in some areas, or what we call bald. So we're going to go back and we're going to apply and more Mod Podge over the carpeting, a very, very watered down amount of Mod Podge, so that it soaks into the embossing powder, and really just sinks into it, and then you can pour another layer of embossing powder over it. Now that we've laid our second layer of the embossing powder, we're going to just go over and check out how our carpet is coming out. So let's check our progress with one of the seats installed. And as you can see here, the carpet is filling out very nicely. I even applied it to the door panels, and you can see how much more full the carpet looks, like one solid bit of carpeting. So this is the kind of result you want when you're doing it. You don't want it to clump up. You want it to be nice, smooth, and flat with no bald or thin spots. From this point on, you're just going to keep applying it as you need it, or depending on how thick you want your carpet to look. It's a really great technique, and you guys, I really think you should try it if you haven't already, as it really does make a big difference on the interior of your models. Guys, here's a quick peek at the almost done passenger side. Put the armrest in just to get a look, see what it would look like with everything intact. You can see where the door panels padded, the carpeting is, and then there's the plastic trim that is not. I'm trying to replicate the car, and on the Fiero, that was where everything sat. So it's coming out really great. I'm very happy with it. Okay, guys, now we're back with the piping as we're creating our second mat pocket. I've already sanded down and shaped the mat pocket and both pieces of sprue there using the super glue as a filler. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking a piece of thin styrene rod and I'm using that to make the piping around the mat pocket. Now the way I do that is just simply by bending it to shape and then applying some Tamiya cement to melt it up against the styrene, basically making it one part. So we're going to do that now, and hopefully this works. And as it dries, we have our piping around the mat pocket. Now you do have to let it set up for a bit because the styrene does get very soft when being melted by the Tamiya. Okay guys, this is how I keep everything straight. Or as straight as I can when doing something like this. Now I'm going to take the rod, I'm going to bend it. First I'm going to make sure I get it right where I want it. You got it? And there we go. We have our rod there. So now we just have to make this bend here to do the piping on the side. which basically we're going to do by, well, first we'll let this set up a little bit. The problem is that you're melting the plastic, so if you don't give it a sufficient time to dry, everything you just did will be for nothing, because it'll just move out of place. So you really do have to give it time for the plastic to do its melting thing and cure before you mess with it some more. So we're gonna let this sit for a bit. Okay, so now we have the finished matte pocket. Doesn't look like much now before paint, and I still have a little bit of sanding to do. But here you can see the piping around the front of the matte pocket, much like the real one, and much like the one that I have already done here. So got to do a little bit more sanding on it, a little more shaping, and then it's off to paint. Alright guys, and here we go with the completely finished matte pocket. All the piping painted, the badge painted on the pocket. Now let me give you a quick glimpse at a mock-up of what it's going to look like in the car. Here we have the passenger side, carpeted. The matte pocket mounted to the door. We have our armrest. You can see the carpeting on the door. I'm very happy with the way this turned out. Still have quite a ways to go. Gonna wait for that one to dry before we start assembling the other one. Then we have to install carpeting on the other side and a bit more custom stuff to go. Alright guys, I'm gonna end this video here and we'll continue the interior work in the next video, in part 2 of the interior build. Alright guys, remember, like, subscribe, give a thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. It really helps us out when you do that. And give me your opinions. How's it looking? I love interacting with you guys. This is really the main reason that I do this, is just to talk to fellow model builders and hear what you guys think about what I'm doing. Quite a few more things to do on here. So I'm going to leave it at that. Remember, if you want a shop card, just email me. I'm going to put my email at email me right here. And if you want, follow me on Facebook right there. Alright guys, I'm going to leave it at this, and I will see you on the next one.